everybody, it's Sarah, and today I want to share with you what I read in August. As always, I have already put up a mid-month wrap-up in which I talked about the first 5 books that I read in August, and I will leave that linked up there and down below. So if you want to know my thoughts on those 5 books, you will have to go over there. But now, as usual, let's start with statistics. I read 14 books this month, which kind of surprised me, not gonna lie, because I felt a little bit slumpy. But not in a way where I didn't read, but just in a way where I didn't fully enjoy anything that I read. However, again, I still read 14 books. 2 of those were rereads and 12 were new to me. Also, part of the reason how I probably managed to read 14 books is that 6 of those books were YA, while 8 were adult novels. And because it interested me, I looked at my overall yearly stats, and I have only read 15 YA books in total so far this year. So just in August, I almost read half of that amount. So that's kind of crazy to me. Then as for genres, 7 of the books that I read in August were high fantasy, 3 were urban/paranormal fantasy. I read 2 books that were literary fiction, 1 that was a sci-fi dystopian novel, and 1 book that was a retelling. And that came out to a total of about 5,150 pages overall this month, which I gotta say, I'm kind of proud of. And lastly, for stats, let's talk about my star ratings, and as always, I won't count my rereads in those. And so I have 1 5-star book, I have 5 4-star books, I have 2 3.5-star books, and I have 4 3-star books, and that came out to an average of 3.66 stars per book, which again, considering that I didn't feel like I actively enjoyed myself reading that much this month, it's actually kind of a good rating. I guess I still thought that objectively most of the books that I read deserve a better rating, so yeah, I'm happy about that. So now let's get into my rereads. First, for the first reread, I actually have kind of a funny story, because this is from one of my favorite series from when I was in high school, when I was 14, 15 years old. And I have not reread the series in years. And I actually have the series at my mom's place. I don't even have it here anymore. And I was at my mom's on Friday and I had forgotten my book. So when I went home in the evening on public transport, I just didn't want to not have a book with me to read, so I decided to just reread 1 from that series, because it's a fast read and I just needed something to simply read on the underground. And that book is One Foot in the Grave by Janine, which is the 2nd book in the Night Huntress series. And I apparently never owned the 1st book because I always borrowed it from Hannah. And this is a very typical kind of paranormal romance, action, fantasy type of thing. You follow Kat, who is half vampire, half human, and her mother always sends her out every night to kill vampires to get revenge on her vampire father, or something along those lines. And then she meets the vampire Bones, and he teaches her that not all vampires are soulless monsters and whatever. It's typical. And I reread it in a night, so it's a really fast read, but apparently it went completely over my head when I first read this in high school, that this book is so incredibly misogynistic. You basically have Kat as the main female character, then you have her mother, who is a horrible person, a horrible person. You have her best friend, who is kind of okay, and then all other female characters that appear are ex-girlfriends of her vampire dude lover, and she's always jealous, she's always really bitchy, she calls them slut, she calls them whore, and it's just crazy. I had not remembered that, and yeah, I'm happy that I can now kind of let go of another series, and I'm pretty sure that I will unhaul it from my mom's place, because I have no need to ever read it again. But it's still a nice memory. I don't know. We'll see. Then the next book I reread was The Gospel of Loki by Joanne. This is a retelling of Norse mythology from the point of view of Loki, and I just loved it as much as I remember loving it the first time I read it. Loki's characterization is just perfect because he just objectively isn't a good person, but he's still really charismatic, and so you kind of root for him even as he does horrible things, and I just love it. This was a kind of pre-official buddy read for my book club, which is of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, in which we read one adult high fantasy written by a woman per month, and it's officially gotten started in September now. We're reading Gods of Shade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia, but I already wanted to kind of read something in August as well, and so I chose The Gospel of Loki because it's a nice fun reread for me. So now we're getting into the books that I read for the first time this month. As always, I'm going by star rating, so starting with the book I enjoyed the least and ending with the book I enjoyed the most. And I will try to keep my wrap-up short and concise because I have 7 books to talk about, so yeah, let's get into it. First, I have Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski, which is book 4/book 2 in the Witcher series, depending on whether or not you count the short stories as novels in the series. And this series follows Geralt of Rivia, who is a witcher. That means he has been alchemically, magically mutated to be better suited to hunting and killing monsters. And his destiny is connected to the destiny of a young child who might have something to do with the fate of the world. As always, I still don't 100% know what the series is about, and it's written in a very interesting way. Just like the first full-length novel that was in the short story collection in this series, this is written in a way where it doesn't really follow typical story structure. So you don't really have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but it just kind of is told like a long epic in a way, where you have like smaller chapters and like kind of snapshots of things that happen, but they're not really connected, and sometimes you don't even find out firsthand what has been happening, but you just have like this king and this other dude talking about what's happening right now, and then suddenly you're following a character who you don't even know who that is, but he knows something, and so he tells you about what Geralt has last been seen doing, and so on. So it's a very interesting concept in the way it is written. I'm still not sure if I really like the way it is written, but I'm intrigued enough still that I want to continue on and finish the series by the end of the year. Next, I have A Certain Ambiguity by Gaurav Suri and Hartosh Singh Bal. This is a kind of literary fiction about mathematics, about philosophy, about coming to a certainty in life, what even is certain in life, and also a little bit of religion, which was the part I liked least about this book, but I'll get to that a bit later. We follow a young Indian man who moves to the state to study business at Stanford. One semester on a whim, he takes a course in mathematics, and he remembers how much he used to love mathematics when he was younger, and when his grandfather kind of explained to him mathematics, because his grandfather was quite a famous mathematician. He also finds out that his grandfather used to spend time in the States and that he was thrown into jail there. And he tries to find out why that was. Now, I absolutely love the mathematics stuff in this book. I found it to be explained in a really comprehensible way. I mean, you kind of have to have a knack for thinking mathematically and have to know how to think mathematically. But if you can do that, then this book is going to be absolutely no problem for you to read, no matter how much you have of a basis in mathematics, in my opinion at least. The part that I didn't enjoy was the part where there was quite a bit in this book of comparing mathematics and like mathematical thinking to religion, and whether or not you can even come to certainty in mathematics, and if it's just the same as in religion, and it's just all based on faith in the end. And I really didn't like that. I am, as I've said in my mid-month wrap-up, I think I am an atheist. I do not care at all what your faith is. Like, I could not care less, unless you kind of start forcing other people to believe in your faith. Then I do start caring, and also when you start being bigoted because of your faith. That's like the two exceptions. But otherwise, I do not care what your faith is. I can even have interesting discussions with you without like disrespecting you if you don't disrespect my like unfaithness. However, I do have a problem when you start kind of equating sciences with faith. I know that there's a lot that we still don't know, but like, actually, I don't want to get into a whole discussion right now. So anyway, I ended up giving this book 3 stars because, well, the mathematics stuff was absolutely 4 stars, maybe even 4.5 stars. The other stuff, the religion-based stuff, I just really didn't like. But I also felt that since it was such an ideologically based thing over which I disliked this book over, I felt like it didn't quite warrant me giving it just 2 stars, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. So now let's get on to my 4 stars. First, I have The Gilda Stories by Jewel Gomez. This is a black lesbian vampire book. So far I think always said it's a black bi vampire book, and I don't know where I got that from. I think I read it somewhere, but it's definitely lesbian and not bisexual. And we follow Gilda, who used to be a young runaway slave in 1850s Louisiana, and she's taken in by these 2 women and she's turned into a vampire, and we basically follow her through the time over 200 years until 2050. And it's actually kind of funny because there's a chapter that's set in 2020, but this was written in 1990. So already like the conceptions of how 2020 would look in terms of technology and so on are kind of wrong. But also it's weird having a chapter that's specifically set in 2020, but there's no coronavirus. And actually on the same day that I read the chapter that was set in 2020, there was like this tweet going around on Twitter of someone in an Amazon review of a book saying, why, this book is set in 2020 and why is there like no mention of the coronavirus? Because of course authors are all clairvoyants. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed Gilda's story. However, this is a very plotless book, so don't really expect any plot. It's mostly just like an exploration of race, of loneliness, of like sociality in a way, of finding someone you can spend your life with and so on, of gender, of sexuality as well. And so you kind of have those chapters that are all set in a year of Gilda's life, and you see those snapshots of her life and so on, and as she meets different people, her interactions with different people. So yeah, I can still recommend this book, but just be aware that this is more along the lines of a literary fiction novel rather than a true urban or paranormal fantasy. Next I have Dokkaebi Vicious Spirits by Kat Jo. This is the sequel / companion novel to Gumiho Wicked Fox, which came out in 2019. And Gumiho Wicked Fox follows Mi-young, who is a fox spirit, a Korean fox spirit, who has to live by like sucking the energy out of men. And in the first book we follow Mi-young, of course, but in this book we follow 2 of the side characters, Jun as well as So-min, and I actually enjoyed this more than the first book, mostly because I didn't really vibe with Mi-young and Ji-hoon as characters. I found them kind of boring, to be honest. However, I really love both Jun and So-min, and there was also a lot of exploration of like family in this book, some of which kind of made me tear up, and I can definitely recommend picking up book 2, even if you were kind of on the fence of picking it up because you maybe didn't enjoy the first book all that much. I still would recommend you give this a try. Also, it's just a duology, so you can just pick it up and then you're done with the duology. Then after years and years, I have finally finished the Reckonist trilogy by Brandon Sanderson with the 3rd book, Calamity. This is set in a kind of futuristic world where 10 years ago a new sun or a new star appeared on the sky. And since then, some people have developed superpowers and have become insanely powerful. Those people are now called epics, which wouldn't be too bad in and of itself. However, all of those epics have turned evil, into tyrants, into dictators, into just like horrible people. And so like living for normal humans isn't that amazing. We follow our main character David, whose father has been killed by a reckoner, and so he wants revenge, and to do that he tries to join this kind of famous rebel group, the Reckoners. And yeah, this is the series finale. I really enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed that the last book I think I read 4 years ago or something, and I did not need to fresh up on the story or anything. I mean, there were some things that I was a bit confused about, but it was still easy enough to read to just jump right back into it. Could I maybe have had a better experience if I had reread the first 2 books? Maybe. Was it necessary? Absolutely not. My last 4-star is The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin, which is book 1 in the Dreamblood duology, of which I did a horrible job summarizing it in my TBR video for September. This is a high fantasy set in a world that is ancient Egypt inspired. And this is set in a country where there's basically no conflict. There's no war, peace is like the highest thing that is possible to achieve, and there's no criminals and everything. And the reason why that is because there's certain people going around killing corrupted souls through dreams. Now we follow one of those people whose job it is to keep the peace through killing people through dreams. And he finds out one day that maybe in his own ranks there might be some corruption, and he tries to find out what exactly is going on. I really enjoyed this. I really loved especially the way, because you have characters from 2 different countries and they basically have the same religion. However, in one of the countries you don't have these people killing through dreams, which is also part of the religion again, and you kind of get this discussion of people who have the basically same religion but are just different in some key aspects, and you kind of get this conflict between them that's really interesting to me. I also recently made a video talking about cultures in fantasy. I also talked about this a little bit in that video, and I will leave the link down below and up there as well, if you're interested on my views on culture in fantasy. But anyway, the other reason why I'm really happy to have read this book is because I kind of want to reread the 5th season and then continue on with the trilogy. But I found the 5th season to be really slow, and I don't know anymore if I enjoyed it or not. And so now if I want to reread and then continue on with the series or not. However, because I did enjoy The Killing Moon so much, I think that maybe it was just the setting of the 5th season that I had a problem with. So I don't have a problem, or I have less of a problem with now trying to reread the 5th season and then moving on, and maybe being a little bit more open-minded of the other series. But yeah, definitely happy to have read this. And then I will only talk very quickly about the last book, because first of all, this video has gone on long enough, and second of all, I will probably have a review of this book up on my channel soon. So that book is my 5-star read from this month, and it's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. And I love this book. It's so beautiful. Ocean Vuong is usually a poet, but this is his first novel. And you can really tell that he's a poet in the way he writes. It's like, it reads like poetry in a way. And this is, I think, a kind of semi-autobiographical letter to his mother who cannot read. And it kind of explores race, it explores being an immigrant, it explores trauma, it explores war, it explores queerness. And it's just an absolutely beautiful read. Again, if you're someone who needs a plot, this probably won't be the book for you. However, I would still recommend you pick it up. But this story really is all about the language and the emotion that language conveys. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. I will have a review up soon, probably with Josie, who you might remember from my review with the Familiars. And yeah, that was the last book that I want to talk about. So now, there we have it. That was all the books that I read in August, or the second half of August. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. All the links to my book club are also in the description box down below, so go and check those out as well. Tell me in the comments if you have read any of the books that I talked about and what your thoughts are on them. And with that said, I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!